Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, I've been doing this a little while, radio. Even before I had my own radio show, I worked very closely with Rush Limbaugh. He called me F. Lee Levin. Since about 1998, I would provide him with constitutional information, and we'd talk every day, every night. One of my closest best friends. And he would tell me that the media always wanted him to fail, and the media always wanted conservative talk radio to fail. So there were endless articles about how conservative talk radio was dying. Now, the truth is, conservative talk radio is the reason why an AM ban still exists, and in part an FM ban, that is terrestrial radio altogether. The truth is, there are certain program managers or general managers or regional managers or even owners who don't know what the hell they're doing. The vast majority do. And they kill their stations. But that's the exception. That's beside the point. We're very pleased to be with our affiliates here. But we're on every platform that's imaginable. But I bring this up to you for a reason, as I'll explain in a minute. Here's May 23, 2011 from the Business Insider. Rush Limbaugh's ratings have fallen 30% in the last 6 months. Salon, July 29, 2013, Rush Limbaugh's finished. Politico, May 24, 2016, is Rush Limbaugh in trouble? This is what he and I would discuss. EUR, Europe Web, Rush Limbaugh suffers ratings decline on talk radio, June 19, 2015. And it goes on and on and on. And we would get these from one after another. Huffington Post, 2012, a challenge to Rush, prove your ratings. Daily Beast, 2011, Rush Limbaugh and right-wing talk radio flame out. Politicus USA 2015, Rush Limbaugh in freefall as his show gets demoted. Adweek, ratings drop for Limbaugh. Media Matters 2014, Rush Limbaugh's California ratings debacle. New York Daily News 2015, Rush Limbaugh might get smaller deal amid struggling ratings. See what I'm saying? Salon, a Marxist operation. Rush Limbaugh's cooked the stunning fall of the right's ratings. And it goes on. 2021, can conservative talk radio survive without Rush? Now, first of all, they said Rush couldn't survive. It goes on and on and on. Arkansas Business, 2014, talk radio on hold against low ratings. New York Daily News, 2015, Rush Limbaugh's ratings appear to be sagging. He was always under attack. Talk radio has always been under attack, and it's under attack again today. And they try and cause one platform or one industry to go after another, but it's not going to work. There are literally thousands of podcasters. All you need basically is a box, and you're a podcaster. There are, of course, podcasters who are massive, podcasters who are a blip. But there are also radio shows that are massive and radio shows that are a blip. This is one of the biggest in the world. This program, this platform, is on terrestrial radio, AM and FM, as well as podcasting and so forth and so on. And we will continue to be on all of our platforms without limitation, without exception. This is a syndicated program. And that's what we will do. And our audience expects it. You expect it. No matter how you listen to it. And I will not allow anybody to get into the way of that through demands of any kind whatsoever. It's not going to happen. Period. But I bring this up for a reason. In October of this year, Pew Research put out a very thorough and extensive survey of listeners of every single platform available. Network TV, cable TV, radio, podcasting, streaming, newspapers, magazines, websites. And they wrote about a third of Americans name NPR, which of course is government subsidized and on 1,000 stations, 34% as at least a minor source of election news. While 27%, it's almost 30% of all the people in the United States who gather information from any source. 27% use conservative talk radio such as Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. The share who cite talk radio as at least a minor source of election news is identical to 2020, when the question named Rush Limbaugh as an example before his death in 2021. Rush Limbaugh's ratings, his audience share, was always massive despite all the attacks. And conservative talk radio today remains massive. Massive. Just because they don't listen to it at Politico, just because they don't listen to it at Axios, including their media expert, they're as out of touch as they were before the election. They have no idea how you get information. You get information from TV, obviously. You get information from podcasts, many of you, particularly younger people. But millions and millions and millions of you get your communication and your information from radio, AM and FM radio, or a show like mine that simulcasts on other formats. I don't know why this is so hard to understand. It isn't. This constant war against conservative talk radio over the decades is intended to undermine it, to usurp it, because the left has nothing similar to it. Zero. They have podcasters. They have big podcasters. Joe Rogan isn't really a conservative. He endorsed Trump, but he also endorsed Bernie Sanders. But he's a great podcaster. And a lot of people listen to him. But that's not my point. My point is that this format, talk radio, is the number one format for conservative voices and listeners anywhere on the planet. It's bigger than any cable channel. It's bigger than any podcaster. It's bigger than any collection of podcasters. And look, I'm a podcaster too, and I love it. And we're going to do more of it. But I'm just speaking to you about the facts. The facts. These are the facts. So over at Axios, which is a very left-wing website, which doesn't know me, which doesn't know this format, which doesn't know anything. They're going through and they're telling you who the new influencers are. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Number one they have. Who's in? Number one. Number two, the organic media gurus. I don't even know what that means. Number three, independent streamers. Independent streamers have barely any audience, just so you know. But it's okay. I'm for all the competition in the world. I'm for taking down massive corporate media, which gives us the likes of Joy Reid. So I'm all for it. Free speech techies like Elon Musk. But you've got to talk about the platforms and the formats. Conservative entertainers. All good. The New York Post and Fox News. I happen to love both of them. Who's out? Fringe websites. Breitbart. Breitbart's not out. Breitbart's massive, and they throw them in with InfoWars. Breitbart's not InfoWars. Newsmax. Newsmax is doing very, very well. Here you go. Number two, Republican radio. There is no Republican radio. What does that mean? It's called conservative talk radio. So the person who wrote this is an imbecile. Republican radio, a slew of conservative radio hosts such as Dana Loesch, Eric Erickson, and Mark Levin, who've tried to fill the void left by the late Rush Limbaugh, don't have the same access and viral prowess as the New Age MAGA podcasters. So I just read you what they were doing to Rush before his death. Demeaning him, trying to minimize him. Tell you that his days are over as a radio host, that he didn't have an audience, which was a lie. I can't speak for the other two, but I have never tried to replace Rush Limbaugh. My hero, my friend, an iconic, historic figure. I do my own thing. And I've been doing my own thing, how long now, Rich? 24 years, I guess? About 24 years. So why would I try to replace Rush Limbaugh? But the point is, conservative talk radio has as big of an audience, which is about 30% of the American people who are seeking information and news and so forth and commentary, as it did 4 years ago. 4 years ago. In 2020. So the idea that we're out, I can tell you right now, we've had more requests we did during the Trump campaign for their surrogates, for the president, and others to come on this show than I can even count. And same with the Senate candidates and congressional candidates. I couldn't take them all. I just couldn't. We tried very hard in the last 2 weeks to bring on as many as we could, including the president, including the vice president-elect. Because here's the little dirty secret. In virtually every single vehicle in this country, there's a radio. It doesn't mean all of you use a radio, but there it is. And some of the biggest podcasters in the country, they all want to be on radio. Why? Because it's a massive built-in audience that exists in every car, on every radio. That doesn't mean that massive built-in audience is necessarily going to listen to a particular radio host or not. That's not my point. My point is to ignore that, like Axios does and some of these other lefties who wrote all these things about Rush and so forth, is to show a level of ignorance that's just unbelievable. President Trump as a candidate was all over conservative talk radio. He understood it. President Trump is a private citizen, is a New Yorker. And he would listen to this show, and he'd listen to Rush show, and he'd listen to Hannity's show. We would listen to these shows. Matter of fact, on WABC, that was called Murderers Row. It was Rush, Hannity, Levin, in that order. Murderers Row. Which obviously Rush has passed away, and Sean's with a different network than I am. It is what it is. But I want to point this out because the effort is to diminish you, the radio listener. That's what it is. That's what it is. And when you look again, as I explained, I have to explain this because I want you folks to understand you're part of a massive movement, and you always have been. There's nothing like conservative talk radio. Nothing. Zero. It is huge. It is massive in the aggregate. We reach hundreds of millions of people every single day. Every single day. And on a weekly basis, this show reaches almost 15 million people. Could be more, we just don't know. Plus, we're on all these other platforms, so it's impossible to really know. But what I do know, it's very interesting, Mr. Producer. I think I've told you, maybe not. I don't think I've told the audience. When I'm in the line, as an example, to get a ticket for an airplane or to get something to eat or something like that, and I open my mouth and people hear this voice, which is obviously a distinct voice. They go, "Are you Mark Levin?" I say, "Yes, I am." Is that good or is that bad? You friend or foe? 98% of the time, friend. So ignore these left-wing sites that are going to try and diminish this format, like Axios, like all the others have done in the past. This guy Avalon, who ran as a Democrat for Congress and lost in New York, he was one of the ones, the no-label party, but then he found a label. He became a Democrat. He was a Republican. He worked for Giuliani. The guy's been all over the place. He used to write these pieces talking about Rush can't survive, Rush's numbers are down, and on and on and on. I just want to assure you, we're strong as ever. Period. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about this evening. One other thing, we only have a minute left in this segment. I'm working on another book. I'm not going to get into it. I think you're going to love it by the time I'm done. It's not about President Trump per se or that sort of thing per se, but it sort of envelops everything. And this is the other thing Axios and the others don't understand. This audience in particular, you, my audience, is the smartest audience of all audiences, period, left or right. You're interested in these books, you read these books. We've had #1 bestsellers the last, I don't even know, 8 books that I've written, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and you know the New York Times hates my guts. We've had seminal books, Liberty and Tyranny, American Marxism, and so forth. There's a whole genre of thinking, of motivation, of values, of love of country, that cannot be sort of relayed or discussed at length over a period of years, one after another, but on this format, right here. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold Gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Nobody says it better than Mark Levin.
I'll go with what Mark Levin said, because nobody could say it better.
Call in now at 877-381-3811.
Have you been hearing the mantra, the cost of mass deportation will be enormous? That's the new media mantra picked up by the Democrat Party talking points. The cost of mass deportation. I have a different question. What's the cost of not doing mass deportation? To our schools, to our healthcare system, to law enforcement. What's the cost year after year after year to our communities and our neighborhoods and our states? And on top of that, since I'm the only one mentioning what means in about 2 weeks everybody will be mentioning it, and it's this: chain migration. Again, chain migration. What's the cost of that? It's enormous. So the illegal aliens have children. They become American citizens. Then we get this, well, the parents need to be citizens too, so we don't split, the families up. So what does that mean? That means that nobody's deported. But in any event, even under the best of circumstances, you have chain migration. And chain migration is not immediate family. It's extended family. It could be third cousins. It could be people you never heard of before. And so one person can bring in on average 19, 20, 30 people. So I want you to multiply 21 million illegal aliens times 10 people. What's the cost of that to a country, including its own culture and identity? What's the cost of that? Well, the country dies. Obviously, it unravels. It's just too much for any country to handle, any society. That's why countries that have been so foolish to do it, and not purposely, by the way, just because they haven't been properly watching their borders and so forth, they've collapsed. So what's the cost of doing nothing? It is the destruction of the United States of America. I thought I would point that out. Now, we were talking about this business, broadcasting. Got a couple articles here that might interest you. Couple articles that might interest you. Fox, no Trump bump. MSNBC is hemorrhaging viewers since Election Day, sheds more than half a primetime audience. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Over at MSLSD. It's a stealth product no one will want to listen to going forward, says Curtis Houck. MSNBC's reliably liberal, that would be left-wing audience, has tuned out the anti-Trump network since Election Day with a staggering 54% drop in primetime viewership. MSNBC averaged 1.1 million viewers during the month of October, but plummeted to an average audience of 736,000 Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week following Trump's victory. MSNBC's remarkable 31% drop comes as Fox News Channel's viewership grew by 61% over the same period. MSNBC also shed 26% of its year-to-date totals, but things got even worse in primetime. During the primetime hours of 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, MSNBC averaged 1.8 million total viewers in October, but viewership of Alex Wagner Tonight, the hell is that? All In with Chris Hayes, what the hell is that? And The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, he's a mental patient, have averaged only 808,000 total viewers since election night. So the 54% drop represents more than half of the network's primetime viewers, and MSNBC is also down 51% from its year-to-date totals, while Fox is up 58% in primetime compared to 2024 averages. MSNBC is also down 16% among total day viewers, and 57% during prime time among the critical demographic adult age 25 to 54. Alex Wagner tonight, Andrea Mitchell reports, Chris Jansing reports, Deadline White House with Nicole Wallace, oh, there's a loser, Jose Diaz-Balart reports, Joy reads, I'm a bigot, the readout, they call it, and The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell all had their smallest audiences of the year this past Friday. Now that's saying something since they're small to begin with. It's also the smallest audience for Alex Wagner tonight. What's with this Alex Wagner? Do you know who that is, Mr. Producer? I know she's one of the hosts, but I don't know that. Since the show launched in 2022 when MSNBC's Rachel Madcow rolled back her on-air presence to only once per week. I need to do that. Once per week. They talked me into doing Saturday, too, but there we are. All In with Chris Hayes had its lowest rated episode since May 10, 2016 on Thursday. A longtime TV news executive who has to remain anonymous noted MSNBC's audience appeared to love to hate Trump during his first administration. That doesn't seem to be the case any longer. Quote, as its poor post-election night ratings show, MSNBC should not expect a Trump bump this time around. Even liberals are rejecting its condescending tone and the divisive rhetoric of its new standard bearer, Joy Reid. Divisive? She's a bigot through and through. MSNBC viewer Sharon Waxman, who's the founder and CEO of Hollywood trade publication The Wrap, wrote that the media got it wrong and she needs a break from the noise. If you're like me, she says, you haven't tuned on the news since last Tuesday when Donald Trump won the election. Personally, I can't bear to listen to another minute of wisdom from Joy Reid, my friend Lawrence O'Donnell, or the admirable Rachel Maddow. I can't do it, she wrote. I'm not saying I'll never watch or listen again, but am I alone here? My entire body recoils from listening to more claptrap from the same claptrapping apparatus. That's one of the reasons we do things differently here. MSNBC personalities have not taken Harris's loss particularly well, as hosts and pundits have repeatedly tried to assign blame for Trump's landslide victory. Stephanie Ruhle, she's a complete reprobate, said Americans were gambling with the country's future by choosing Trump as their next president. Shut up, you idiot. Claire McCaskill, the unsightly former senator from Missouri, cried on air after watching Harris's concession speech. Joy Reid essentially blamed white women. White women. Isn't that a movie? Blazing Saddles. Where are the white women? For Harris's North Carolina loss, and said black women have resigned from the Save America coalition. And Al Sharpton claimed that misogyny and racism, two things he no doubt knows about, among voters may have cost Harris the election. MSNBC host Jonathan Capehart said he was still grappling with how someone was elected that ran a campaign that was openly hostile, openly racist, xenophobic, misogynist, transphobic. He didn't do that. But in between Capehart's ears, he did. While MSNBC on-screen graphics said, finding hope in a dark time. Jen Psaki even said the Democrat Party over-relied on never-Trump Republicans. You know, Dizzy Lizzie and her ilk. By the way, where's Chris Christie today, Mr. Producer? Is he at the all-you-can-eat buffet somewhere? The rhetoric came after MSNBC spent years promoting never-Trump Republicans, targeting hardcore Democrats, largely dismissing non-liberals. MSNBC, they have like Michael Steele on there. That's a real ratings getter. MSNBC recently touted a ratings victory, noting the liberal network tops CNN. Oh, wow. On a presidential election night for the first time in the network history. However, Newsbusters managing editor Curtis Houck feels it was simply an anomaly. While MSNBC thought they may have struck gold with the election night ratings, they should have realized by now Americans only tuned in so they could see the meltdowns. I have friends that do that. A buddy, Danny, part of their family, says, I watch them just to see how they react. During CNN's tumbles in past years, they were falling behind reruns of Golden Girls and Peppa Pig. They're running up against me on Saturdays, a repeat of Bill Maher. You know how well that's doing? It's a disaster. They run everything they can think of against me. The only thing that takes a little chunk out of me is Sunday Night Football. But even there, on Sunday night, we had a two-share. We had like 2 million viewers, give or take. But I like to win the night. I didn't win the night because it was a big Monday Night Football. So everybody's salivating. See that? See that? We got Levin. Oh, no, you didn't, baby. I'm kicking, and I'm kicking ass. The somber excuses blaming everyone from working-class women to Hispanic men to conservative media seem to be serving as only temporary bombs to the scorching results. Chris Hayes and Alex Wagner, does she get paid every time her name's mentioned? Have a brand to commit to where the only change the left will have even go further left. I talked about this even without having this information the other night. I said to you, the media are the greatest poison in this country. They just are the worst of the worst. The Hitler, the fascism, it all started with them. The impeachment of Trump, it all started with them. And it's not ending. They're the worst of the worst. I guarantee the view ratings are way down. Who wants to watch these five yentas slobbering over each other? Rachel Maddow's viewership took a dive when special counsel Robert Mueller declared there was no collusion between the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia, despite the far left. She spent her whole damn show on that every single night. You know, and I think I'm just going to do one show a week. That's one too many. That's one too many. When we come back, what's going on over there at CNN, Mr. Producer? Wow, looks like there's a lot of layoffs coming. I said these corporations need to get control of these platforms and bring professional journalism back again with professional journalists. Let's hope that they're listening. I suspect they're listening with one ear and then the other ear is probably clogged. I'm just guessing. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Now we have the Constipated News Network that's always been hanging by its fingernails. I've never really understood why it exists. I understand why it was created in the first place, to be a news network, but it's certainly not anymore. Our friend Brian at The Right Scoop, looks like another leftist network is about to get hit in a bad way after Trump's election, and this time it's CNN. You just heard about MSNBC. Earlier today, we told you that MSNBC's ratings have cratered, that the Comcast is considering selling the network. Now we learn that CNN's new CEO is about to unleash sweeping layoffs to try and save the network's flailing reputation. Here's more from the Daily Mail. CNN is planning to wield the axe on some of its high-paid staff after dismal election ratings that cap off a disastrous period for the cable news network. According to an explosive report from the Puck, network executives will unleash sweeping layoffs in a bid to save the network's flailing reputation. It comes after the departure of stalwart Chris Wallace. He's no stalwart. He's a wannabe and has been after 50 years. And amid reports, senior stars like Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper have both been denied raises. Wolf Blitzer? Isn't it time for him to be swept out of there anyway, Mr. Producer? And Jake Tapper, well, Hamas has never had a better friend. There's no mention of who may be on the chopping block. The highest paid stars include Anderson Cooper, rakes in $20 million a year. Whoa. $20 million a year for Anderson Cooper? What am I, chopped liver, Mr. Producer? Erin Burnett, $6 million, the $6 million lady? Oy. And rising star Caitlin Collins gets $3 million. She's one angry young lady. Actually quite repulsive. In the next few months, I'm told CNN will implement another round of layoffs that will impact hundreds of employees across the organization. says reporter Dylan Byers, who wrote Friday, referencing CNN's recent 100-person layoff seen over the summer. Didn't they just bring back Brian Stelter? They could save a lot of money right there. He eats all the donuts in the green room, Mr. Producer. I understand he has a fetish. When he's done, he rubs them on his body, but that's a whole other story. The fresh round of firings, the insider said, will be more geared toward the production side of things. As a result, reporters and correspondents will be required to cover their slack, describing how on-air workers will be asked to assume more of the responsibilities, once handled by teams of producers and production assistants. You know, it's funny. Almost every host in America on TV, they don't write their own monologues or they're heavily edited. Nobody writes anything for me. Tell them, Mr. But does anybody write anything for me? Never. My TV production guys, they'll tell you the same thing. When I do my Saturday and Sunday show, I get up at 6 in the morning. And I put together my arguments and so forth. Sometimes, despite hours of working on it, I can't think of the right thing to say, so what do? In the last 5 minutes before the camera goes on, I have it in my head, and I start to discuss it. Byers wrote, redundant assignments will be nixed, and various divisions will be reduced or even eliminated. Some of the on-air talent are also likely to be affected, he went on to reveal. Sources who spoke to the reporter, who worked at CNN for 3 years before founding Puck, added how the looming layoffs are part of an overarching plan, one that puts a premium on the station's digital platforms. Isn't it amazing? Conservative talk radio is going to last longer than most of the digital platforms. The man behind it, they said, is none other than new CEO Mark Thompson, the former New York Times boss, brought in to overhaul the network under its Warner Brothers Discovery parent. This is amazing because I did this discussion over the weekend on my Fox show, and here last week, I said until Warner Brothers gets a hold of CNN, I said until Disney gets a hold of ABC, until Comcast gets a hold of NBC, MSNBC, until Paramount gets a hold of CBS, this crap that they keep spewing to the American people, which we're sick of, which we don't want anything to do with anymore. If they don't do anything about it, they're not going to get ratings, and they may not even care about it, but apparently some of them do. Look, I have to be honest with you. I used to watch network nighttime news before I was on radio. It was liberal, but it wasn't nuts. It wasn't crazy. Crazy ass, like Joy Reid and her ilk, or The View. Is just a poisonous show that's gotten completely out of control. The old BBC boss filled the position left by then languishing leader Chris Licht this past August, and since then ratings have fallen more than 20%. I can tell you my ratings are up. My Fox ratings are through the roof. Which is why nobody ever talks about it, but nobody ever reports it. It's hilarious. But we don't have to, do we? We just do our thing. And I'm grateful to you, our very big family. Very big family. God bless each and every one of you. You know what? We got 2 powerful hours left. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Welcome back, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You've heard me talk about Arthur Fergenson. Arthur and I go way back. Gee whiz, Arthur. It's like 45 years, for crying out loud. And he was a clerk on the Supreme Court for then Chief Justice Warren Burger. Very brilliant. He worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office for a period of time in Baltimore. But beyond that, he's just a dear friend, a brilliant gentleman. He graduated #1 at Yale Law. Hey, but who's counting? Anyway, yeah, Arthur and I have been talking about this issue of common law writs. And Arthur, I want you to explain it, plain English, what's going on in New York, because I'm listening to Professor, I'm listening to the federal prosecutor, and for some reason, they find this abhorrent. Maybe it's just not in their wheelhouse, or they're just not used to it. So explain the situation. We're caught with this Judge Merchan, who really is a low IQ constitutional illiterate. We've got matters in this case in New York that clearly are federal in nature. The underlying law that they used was a federal campaign law to turn a law that already expired under the statute of limitations, was a misdemeanor every circumstance, and they tried to hook this federal campaign law to create a felony. And then they have violated his due process rights, his equal protection rights. They had this jury. The rulings were preposterous. It's on appeal. Now, you're free to go up and down that appeal level and hope for the best. But given all the federal nature of this and the fact that Donald Trump's been elected president of the United States, it's only a matter of a few months until he enters the Oval Office. How do you allow an acting state judge to make a determination on whether this president, number one, goes to jail, which is the worst case, but number two, sullies his reputation, and I can go on and on and on about basically handicapping and interfering with the most powerful federal office in the country?
Absolutely, Mark. This is the violations of Donald Trump's due process rights have become magnified in the interim since he was elected and is now going to be president. He's president-elect of the United States. He has to be prepared to run the country. He's gotten off to a flying start, but he has so much work to do, and yet he has a constitutional right to be able to participate in his own defense. He should, and he cannot now, do both. And he should, and to have this case go forward with his constitutionally required participation is an affront to basic constitutional law. It is a violation of due process. It is also an affront to the separation of powers and the federalism issues involved in going after a president-elect of the United States. Now,
and the nexus here is we have a federal law, and as you've pointed out and we've discussed, the Supremacy Clause. A state judge has no business being involved in any of this right now, correct?
Absolutely. Merely by the Supremacy Clause, he is interfering in the operations of the federal government because a president-elect with the president's, powers to run and guide the transition is paramount. The Supremacy Clause should end the debate. Any further proceedings in state court are an affront to the Constitution, affront to the executive branch, and affront to Donald Trump's personal rights of due process. Now,
so
what should we do?
I'm sorry. So how do you get it out of the hands of this judge and get it where it needs to go and get an adjudication here?
Well, you take the New York attorneys and they will do whatever they need to as a predicate immediately before we hear from the runaway prosecutor to go into state court and ask for emergency relief. Probably be denied, but it'll establish the predicate to go immediately, won't be a final decision on the merits, but to go immediately to the Supreme Court and at least consider to seek the rare, but this is a rare case, of the rare relief of a common law writ of certiorari.
All right, let's do this step by step. Let's slow down. So you're saying, look, you seek an emergency appeal because you need to get this out of the way.
Yes.
And if the appellate court in New York itself won't act responsibly and take care of this, you're saying now you have grounds, go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, how would you go to the U.S. Supreme Court?
I would consider using a common law writ of certiorari because the U.S. Supreme Court has the rights of common law writs that go to before the Constitution was adopted, and those common law writs allow the Supreme Court to act in extraordinary cases to grant relief. And this is an extraordinary case. They can take it up if they choose to. And I've had some experience when I was a law clerk in reviewing a case where common law writs were sought to be invoked. They weren't granted, but it is there. I cannot think of a worse case of abuse of our federal system, of the executive branch, of the rights of Donald Trump as a litigant than this one. So I would be prepared to say, look, we tried in the state courts on an emergency basis. This judge isn't giving it up because he put in the scheduling order.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
there's nowhere else to go for relief. This is it, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
even if there is no writ of certiorari, this court has the inherent right to grant justice in extraordinary cases under its common law writs of mandamus.
Let me explain what that means. Common law, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not statutory. It's not constitutional. It is an implied power that the highest court, in this case, in the land has.
Right, inherent in the ability of the Supreme Court to act to accord justice in rare cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very, very important. Yeah, go ahead.
And you're right. It adheres, and in fact, it adheres in the Supreme Court and has since its founding. It is rarely invoked. It is rarely used. This case with Marchand, I'm a member of the New York Bar, and I'm ashamed of him, and I'm ashamed to brag. This case never should have been brought. It was prosecuted vindictively, and it is rife with constitutional errors. Those have been added to with the federalism issues and magnified by its continued proceeding. And even if the court may say, Supreme Court may say, look, they tried in the case, they tried to get relief. They did what they could from New York appellate courts. They did what they could with Marchand. That doesn't happen. We will demand a filing from the state prosecutor. We will demand it, and essentially warning the state prosecutor that they will act, and then maybe the state prosecutor will dismiss the case.
We're running out of time. So, Arthur, a lot of people are saying we should refer to the immunity case in the Supreme Court. I mean, that's all very interesting. But again, that doesn't resolve the matter where it needs to be resolved, right? They can bring up the immunity case. Already, Marchand's ignored that pretty much, right?
Yes, he has. And I think that these other circumstances, the supremacy clause, as you point out, and as you and I have discussed, the federalism issue is new and enhanced. He's not just a candidate; he's president-elect, and that is an attack on the executive branch. Under the supremacy clause, the executive branch is paramount and cannot be attacked or interfered with by states. The states have their own sovereignty, but they cannot interfere with federal sovereignty. That's one. Number two is Donald Trump has a right, a constitutional right, to participate in his defense. And he cannot exercise that right consistent with his obligations as president-elect to prepare to govern this most powerful country in the world.
And Arthur, for the public, 1973 and 2000 memos written by the Department of Justice. It's been the position for a half century when it comes to federal prosecutions that has to be taken into consideration. The idea that a state court, that an acting state judge can basically handicap a president in not only defending himself but executing his duties goes right to the heart of those memos.
You're absolutely right, Mark. And the inherent power of the Supreme Court to place the interest of the United States above that of a judge which has gone way beyond his brief and of a prosecutor who doesn't seek justice but retribution in an unconstitutional case and a meritless case, the Supreme Court should consider, in this rare case, of at least bringing the threat of ultimate a disgrace on Bragg and Marchand, and maybe they'll drop it.
Very good. And we do have a more recent case of effectively common law writ, because that's pretty much what the Supreme Court had to do when they took up Bush versus Gore, because there was really no pathway to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Arthur Fergenson, one of the great geniuses out there when it comes to constitutional law and cooking, by the way, and singing. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you very much. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you're a great friend, Mark, since 1981, when you and I were one of maybe a minion of Jewish conservatives in the country.
Yeah, we were that's right. It was very small, and we were working for the Reagan administration. Take care, brother. You be well. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to Micro Works, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other three guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, I'll tell you what, he's going to be unbelievable. Dear friend, he's just great. We have a friend with us now. Is Todd there?
I'm here. Hey, Mark.
Are you there, Todd?
I'm here. Amen.
All right, I need your mouth right up to the mouthpiece there.
Okay.
This is President Trump's great lawyer in almost all his cases. And it's always a pleasure to have Todd Blanche with us. So, Todd, tell us what's going on in New York.
So, look, we learned over the weekend that after we had asked Alvin Bragg and his team to dismiss the case because you can't touch a president-elect if you're a state and local prosecutor, we learned over the weekend that they at least started the process of dismissing the cases by agreeing to ask for a stay of all proceedings for a week while they figure out what to do. So Judge Marchand, the judge on the case, agreed. So while we had expected an immunity decision today, there was no decision. While we had expected that the district attorney would submit a sentencing brief this weekend, there will be no brief, and there will be no sentencing on the scheduled date, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Now, that's not a total victory because the case should be dismissed, not stayed. So our hope and our expectation is that the DA is going to take the time this week to do whatever they need to do internally and then agree that the case has to be dismissed. So it was a great day for President Trump, a great day for all your listeners, a great day for the fight that we've had the past year and a half, because it really started the process of ending this case.
Do they understand, do you think, at this point, that they literally have no jurisdiction?
Listen, I hope so, Mark. Like, you and I both went to law school, and so did they. And so...
yeah, but there are a lot of stupid guys in law school. They sitting in the back row there.
Well, the reality is, you cannot... The idea that a state and local judge in a state and local jurisdiction that hates the president-elect, the idea that that judge could be able to sentence the president-elect up to 4 years in prison is absurd and obviously inconsistent with our Constitution, and they know that. They know that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just getting there and getting them comfortable. And, President Trump won big, and he won in many ways because of this case and because of the other cases. The American people said, no, we're not going to stand for it. So, look, we'll see what happens, Mark. I mean, it's not a victory yet. We're going to keep on fighting this whole week and getting a brief ready in case we have to use it. But hopefully the case gets dismissed next week.
Okay, so if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, where do you go next?
Look, it's really all hands on deck, and that means either going through the New York appellate process, going to federal court, or both. We still have the immunity decision that Judge Rashan has to rule on. Depending on how he rules, if he rules against us, we can appeal that immediately. So, look, our goal is to have this case dismissed. If we have to continue to fight through the appellate process to make sure President Trump is never sentenced and never has to walk into that courtroom again, then we'll do that too. So we honestly have a great group of lawyers. We're a great team, and we have a whole bunch of 5 or 6 different options available to us that if we have to use them, we'll use them. And so we're prepared, but look, we're cautiously optimistic because I think the American people, honestly, it was humbling for me as President Trump's criminal lawyer to see what the American people did on election night on November 5th, because it just proved everything we've been saying for the past year and a half. And so all we need to do is get the district attorney to recognize that. So
okay, well, he is what he is, Let me
that's right.
Let me tighten the screws just a little bit more on them. You know where I stand on this stuff. At some point, if you have to, you do the common law writ and you get to the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court, you can go into federal district court, I guess, and work your way up that channel. But to me, this needs to be resolved, and I know you know this more than anybody, before he's sworn in. This has to be cleaned out of the way. So if New York's going to putz around, and then a federal district court, and then the appellate court, then the Supreme Court, it seems to me that the Supreme Court has a huge obligation to protect the executive branch, to protect the office of the presidency, in particular, federal jurisdiction. We're talking about a federal campaign law and the supremacy clause. I mean, I can think of half a dozen things right off the top of my head, right?
That's right.
So you're still going to have to keep that in your back pocket, I think, just in case.
Listen, same page. Like what I told you, we had 5 or 6 different options. If we have to... Look, I want the American people, I want my job should be to disappear. The President of the United States does not need a criminal defense.
No, your job ought to be eventually somewhere in the Department of Justice. You need it, Todd. Go ahead.
I hope so. I would serve the President at any capacity.
I can tell you I was chief of staff over there under Reagan and Meese. You'd be good at, head of the criminal division as a perfect example. But anyway, go ahead.
I would love it. But my point is, my job is to let the president lead this country into January 20th and then take over. And so my hope is that we get this dismissed with the path of least resistance. I don't want to be in the news going to the Supreme Court. But you better believe if we have to, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, folks, Todd Blanche, one of the best lawyers out there, he has been up against it. I mean, governments, which have unlimited resources, and he's beaten them. Todd, God bless you, my friend. Take care of yourself. We appreciate you. We'll be right back. Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to Micro Works, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other 3 guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Mark Levin, radio's hell-raising intellectual. Call now, 877-381-3811.
I think Todd Blanche and the crew there will get what they want eventually. I would just try and get it the hell over with as quickly as possible. Arthur and I would. We'd file the emergency appeal, get it out of Merchant's hands, see what they do. If they do the right thing, then we're done. And if they don't, I'd move right to the Supreme Court. I wouldn't putz around in federal district court, federal appellate court. Let's get an answer. Let's get this resolved. He mentioned a public spectacle. It is a public spectacle already. If there's any public spectacle, however, it's on them, not Trump. Them being the government, New York government, and the prosecutors. So that's just the way I do things. It's the way I've done things for how long now? I've been practicing law since I'm 23, almost 45 years. That's the way I would do it. Get it done. Get it to the body that can make the decision and stop putzing around. But that's just me. What do I know? Hakeem Jeffries was on CBS Morning today. What do you make of this Michael Strahan, Mr. Producer, who wouldn't put his hand over his heart during the national anthem on Veterans Day? What's that all about? He's never explained himself. He didn't apologize. The league thinks it's just fine. I mean, it's just outrageous. Everybody else on that panel put their hand over their heart, but for some reason he didn't. Why? Has he got something up his crawl or something? I mean, America's been good to an awful lot of people. He's one of them. So I don't know. I don't want to attack him or criticize him because I don't know what's going on there. I just don't. Anyway, let's keep rolling here. Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, with Gayle King. I thought she was retiring over there. Maybe I'm wrong. Gayle King to Representative Hakeem Jeffries on CBS Morning today. Let's actually go to cut 2 first with Nate Burleson and Hakeem Jeffries. Mr. Producer, go ahead.
Speaking of those two things, the economy and immigration, do you believe that Vice President Harris should have created more of a distinction between what she was going to do up against what the Biden administration is doing?
Well, we'll have an opportunity to engage in after-action analysis, and I expect that will happen not just over the next few days, but over the next few weeks and the next few months. It will be required. From our perspective as House Democrats, I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night, why did it happen, and how do we improve upon the performance in order to put us in the strongest
possible. This is what people are tired. This all mealy-mouthed nonsense. He's saying nothing. Literally nothing. The question was straightforward. And he didn't want to answer it. Now, they just got blown out. And even now, they don't want to answer it. I don't know why. If you're going to fix something, you have to acknowledge there's a problem. Go ahead.
To deliver for the American people moving forward.
More platitudes. The question is how and when. But let's go on. Here's Gayle King, same show, same time. Cut 3, go.
It sounds like you're still processing, but were you stunned last Tuesday night? I'm just curious. I know lessons learned and all of that, but were you stunned by what happened?
Now, by the way, that's very good of her. You see, this is a real, I don't know her. I don't watch this show, but that is a real journalistic question. Okay, we understand your processing and all the rest. Were you stunned by it? And what are you going to do about it? Go ahead.
As Vice President Harris repeatedly stated, including at the convention, this is close, and it's going to be close.
But it wasn't close
all the way through. I think at the end of the day, the popular vote will be close. I think it was, an electoral college outcome that most people on the Democratic side didn't expect because everything broke at the presidential level in terms of Donald Trump's direction.
Oh, my God. He's painful to listen to. I'm being honest with you. I don't know the man. He's just painful. The mealy-mouthed crap is just It wasn't a close election. On the popular election, you know, you could have California running up the numbers and stuff like that, but it wasn't close. People looked at county to county. They looked at typical black voting groups, so-called, Democrat voting groups, black groups, Latino groups, women groups, and so forth and so on. They didn't get their numbers. So for the Democrat Party, it was a knife to the heart. Now, they know that. He knows that. And so the idea that when she says correctly it wasn't close, it wasn't close. He won every single battleground state. And he was, I mean, and the Democrats were saying they were going to win. Okay, they lost, and they lost big, and they lost the Senate, and they didn't take the House. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then we have Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. You know, if Comcast is going to really clean up that place, they got to get rid of the liars. It's one thing to have a different opinion if it's based on something rational, your own knowledge, facts, something. But it's quite another just to lie and to blatantly lie over and over and over again, which is what they do. Cut 4, go.
Vote. Donald Trump currently has 50.2% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 40.1% of the vote. But that margin will probably narrow after all the California votes are finally counted. And it is.
But what's the point? What is the point? That it was a close election? You're throwing in all the California votes? It wasn't a close election. You're never going to see a landslide again like the Reagan landslide, 59% of the vote. It's not going to happen because demographics have changed significantly. Other things have changed in terms of our electoral process. You're just not going to see it again. But in terms of modern day definitions of a landslide, this is a landslide. Period. And you can throw California in there, he's still going to win the popular vote. That's what makes it a landslide. From county to county and state to state, the only state in which Trump didn't do better than he did before was Washington State. The 49 other states moved, some of them significantly. He lost New Jersey by 5 points. That's nothing. Nothing. And I can go through these blue states, too. You can go through the blue cities. He did better in every single major metropolitan area than he did before. The Democrats know this. It's a disaster. Gayle King knows it. It's a disaster. Lawrence O'Donnell's going to sit there on MSNBC and keep lying. Is that what Comcast wants? Go ahead.
Kamala Harris will end up with only 1% of the vote less than Donald Trump, a 1% gap. Right now, she's at 2% less than Donald Trump. If you hear anyone calling this election a landslide, please stop listening to that person about elections.
You see what I mean? So the question for Comcast is, do they want a clown like this day in and day out? Do they want a clown like Joy Reid? Now she's attacking, quote-unquote, white women. I mean, do we really need that in this country? Are the corporatists going to take care now that they're real journalists and they pursue professional journalism in their newsrooms? Or is this going to keep up like this? With a clown like Lawrence O'Donnell or a bigot like Joy Reid? It's even more than that. I just read, let me find it in my articles here, Mr. Producer. Give me one second. Everybody, we're live and national. But let's see here a second. I'll find it quickly. Let's see. Give me a second. Something about Al Sharpton and what happened with him. Let's see here. What it says here is, I don't have the article right in front of me. Here it is. This is the Washington Free Beacon. Now listen to this. This is another MSNBC weekend host, I guess. It's a story in the Washington Free Beacon, an outstanding site by Chuck Ross. Kamala Harris campaign gave $500,000 to Al Sharpton's nonprofit weeks before glowing interview with anti-Semitic MSNBC host. Kamala Harris's presidential campaign donated $500,000 to Al Sharpton's nonprofit organization just weeks before he, who once called Jews diamond merchants that have blood of innocent babies on their hands and all the rest, conducted a friendly interview with Harris as I read this. So that's my focus. $500,000 weeks before a friendly interview. Shouldn't that be disclosed, Mr. Producer? And Oprah got $1 million, and now she says she didn't, but people are looking at the FEC reports and saying, well, then what the hell is this? People are wanting to know about everybody. Shouldn't this be disclosed? If you're going to interview somebody and they contribute $500,000 to your nonprofit organization, which is really the basis of your income and your activity, just weeks before, of course it should be disclosed. MSNBC has absolutely no standards for professionalism, for ethics, nothing. Zero. Everything's out the window. And that's Comcast. And many of you have them as a cable company, and you pay a fortune through your nose for that cable company that keeps pushing this crap into your household. And that's no joke. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to Micro Works, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other three guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. A lot of positions have been announced since we've been on the air, Mr. Producer. Have you noticed that? By the way, we're going to have a fantastic gentleman on in this program. Let's see, in about a half hour. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation. I'm a huge fan of the Heritage Foundation. They've been around since the 70s. They were very critical in assisting the Reagan administration, and we at the Department of Justice. In fact, when Ed Meese retired from government, one of the most prominent positions he held for several decades was at the Heritage Foundation, where we advanced the Constitution, where we examined carefully judicial nominees, recommended judicial nominees. I wasn't involved, I'm just making the point. And so the Heritage Foundation has been a bulwark for constitutional and conservative government and faith and morality, really for half a century. Project 2025. One day we're going to dig into this project. I honestly don't know anything about it. I haven't read it, but I'm guessing it was akin to Mandate for Leadership, which is what the Heritage Foundation put together for the Reagan administration. About 85% of the recommendations were, in fact, instituted. A lot of the people who were involved in that project were, in fact, Trump people, but they made it so toxic, did the Democrats and the media, because they didn't want to get into substance and knowledge and actual positions, that is the media and the Democrats, that they made it so toxic. They're busy reading the Communist manifestos. You can't reach Project 2025. Oh, my God! My God! That obviously the president needed to distance himself and so forth and so on, but I don't have to distance myself from anything. I think I'm the only person, Mr. Producer, who doesn't want a job in the government. You realize that? I love what I'm doing. I want no job in the administration or anything in the government. I'm the one guy, I think. But I had my stint in the government. Here's the fired FEMA worker. I think her name's Marnie Washington. I want you to listen. She's being interviewed by Roland Martin. I'm no fan of this guy, but nonetheless, the interview's the interview, right? Information's information. Now, this is the woman who was pointed out, who put out the word that when it came to these hurricanes and so forth, stay away from any house that has a noticeable Trump sign or Trump support of some kind, and they bypass these houses. One of the mayors in a small town in Florida said, yeah, they passed this whole street up. Now that is really outrageous. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm guessing it's not the only agency that's done that, FEMA and so forth. But when people are down and out, that's not the way you play. No. But here she is. Cut 7, go.
I was notified after I demobbed. The next morning, they told me verbally I was fired, but they never provided me anything in writing stating that I was fired. They all alleged that these actions were made on my own recognizances and that it was for my own political advances. However, if you look at the record, there is what we call a community trend. And unfortunately, it just so happened that the political hostility that was encountered by my team, and I was on 2 different teams during this deployment, they just so happened to have the Trump campaign signage. FEMA always preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. So this is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance, not just in the state of Florida, but you will find avoidance in the Carolinas.
Okay, I understand what she's trying to say. When there's hostility, we don't go in. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who aren't being hostile to anybody, have a Trump sign in their yard and so forth and so on. So she's going to have to be questioned under oath, as is everybody up and down the chain, because this cannot be tolerated, period. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Masih Alanjad, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She's an Iranian-American journalist. And the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, in addition to trying to assassinate President Trump and a host of others who worked in the Trump administration in the first time around, they're trying to assassinate her because she's truly a journalist who helps expose the Hitlerian conduct of the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, including to its own people, the brutality, the raping, the torture, the imprisonment, and the murder of young women who just choose not to follow the fundamentalist demands of the illegitimate genocidal regime. And I want you to listen to this. She was talking about, again, the Iranian regime trying to assassinate her and the response of the Biden administration. This is very telling to me. Cut 13, go.
In the aftermath of the assassination plot, no administration officials have ever reached out to me or other Iranian Americans facing the same threats. The White House warned me this year that there have been more than 31 credible threats against me on U.S. soil, but their advice for me was just go under witness protection. And what witness protection means I have to change my name, my social security number, my identity, and get lost, disappear. That's not in my DNA. I understand that they want to protect me, but being silent is what the Islamic Republic wants. Here, I appeal for your help. The administration has a responsibility to combat terror and protect me and other Americans to express ourselves freely on U.S. soil. It is important for the White House to acknowledge the threats posed by Iranian regime as national security threats. I ask that a dedicated office to be set up at the appropriate law enforcement agency to monitor Islamic Republic's threats on our homeland and protect Americans from the physical and cyber reach of Islamic regime. That would be a start for Americans to feel safe at home. Now, Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel should serve a wake-up call for all American allies. If the U.S. and its allies do not get united to end terrorism now, terrorists will get united and end democracy.
Mm-hmm. But the issue there for me was They've done nothing. They didn't even talk to her. They've done nothing to even protect her. You know what I mean? It's just incredible to me. And that to me is appalling. They should be building a case, the most extensive case they possibly can, but they don't. They don't care. This is an American citizen, folks. It's an American citizen. Now, Joe Biden's going to leave office, and he pretends that he's very pro-Israel. He pretends that he has this relationship with Jews because the president of Israel, Herzog, is kind of a lib. He's a figurehead in many respects. His father was, too, in the same position. But he's kind of a lib, so, he wants to get along with everybody, which is all well and good, but first you have to survive. But for those of us who understand what's been going on with this regime, how they've treated the state of Israel, how they have funded the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran and all the surrogates, it's repulsive. Absolutely repulsive. And look so far what President Trump has done in terms of his ambassador appointment, in terms of his National Security Council, in terms of the Defense Department. We're still waiting for state. By the way, I understand Rubio is the likely appointee. Is that what I'm reading, Mr. Producer? Well, that's what I'm reading. I didn't say he's the likely appointee, but, Rick Grinnell would be fantastic in that slot, too. I'm a big Rick Grinnell fan. But Ratcliffe over at the CIA, this is a very strong group. But here's Biden. I've always said action speaks louder than words. Even though I spent a lot of time using words, we are activists here. We are mission-oriented here. We just don't bloviate. But listen to this. Cut 11, go.
Well, I hope my father heard it. My father was what we call a righteous Christian.
He keeps telling his father was this, his father was that, his mother was this. Can you ever stop talking about himself? Ever? His father was a righteous Christian? What did his father do exactly? Anyway, go ahead.
Moved more rapidly back in World War II and less. And anyway.
I think that was a great legacy of your father.
Well, it was. And I remember how I got in trouble. We were friends even back then when I said years ago as a senator, I said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
And I know you are. You're clearly a Zionist, Mr. President.
Well,
and this is what I mean. This guy Herzog slobbering all over him. Does he sound like, quote-unquote, a Zionist when he's talking about a two-state solution, which will be Israel's final solution? Is that what he sounds like to you folks? When he helped save the regime in Iran so it could slaughter its own people and kill Israelis, so they could fund Hezbollah and Hamas? Does that sound like a Zionist to you, America? When he's trying to dethrone, or I should say more correctly, conduct a coup against the elected prime minister and government of Israel, does that sound good to you? Like a Zionist? I mean, how stupid is this? Very stupid. Then look at the positions now. Look at the appointments by Trump now. By the way, the Jew haters are probably very angry right about now. Wait a minute, I thought you thought nothing. These are very, very important appointments. They're very, very good, and they're pro-American. That's the key. They're pro-American appointments. That's the key. Pramila Jayapal was on CNN yesterday. Why do they go to her and promote her? Why do they promote Bernie Sanders and AOC? These are the reprobates. These are the Marxist jihadists. These are the people that drag down the Democrat Party. Seriously, there's nothing moderate about them in any respect. She heads the progressive, whatever they call themselves, meaning the Karl Marx wing of the Democrat Party. You got Bernie Sanders, who is a Stalinist. That's not a pejorative. That is a fact. He's a Stalinist. And they keep interviewing these people who keep saying what's wrong with the Democrat Party. So the media they're not just reporting. They are the point of the spear on this ideology. They're the point of the spear. This is what they're pushing. And this is why I hope when they deal with CNN, they take care of business. This is why, not to just fire people, I'm not into that, but they really clean up their operations. Same with MSNBC. All of these outlets are just horrid. They bring these clowns on. Anyway, let's listen to her. Cut 10, go.
There was one party that tried to initiate a culture war, a so-called culture war, against a tiny group of people. That was the Republican Party that poured billions of dollars into this. I go back to the fact that we can have an economic agenda that allows people to feel good and safe about their lives and that is inclusive so that everybody gets to live their life out. I don't think that just trying to instill fear and joining a party that is instilling people for a tiny, tiny group of population, group of people that we're talking about is the right way to go about this. Let's go back to our business. Let's get that economic agenda, which we actually know what it is. We've had a proposition agenda at the CPC for some time, and it includes...
And what is the agenda? National health care. Medicare for illegal aliens. I'm telling you what their agenda is. Nationalize much of our economic activity. It's a dead end. It's socialism. That's what much of it is. That's the truth. Go ahead.
Taking on these big corporate monopolies, taking on price gouging.
First of all, let's slow down. There are no corporate monopolies in America. Name one. Oh, Big Pharma. It's not a monopoly. Big Ag. It's not a monopoly. They don't even know the language. You may not like big corporations per se or oligopolies per se. There are no monopolies in America. The biggest monopoly, I'm wrong about that, is the federal government. And it controls everything. It can make laws. It can enforce laws. It can choose not to enforce laws. It's the greatest threat we face. But monopolies aren't the problem in America. She's the problem. They're the problem. 4 years ago, the economy was bustling. Bustling. Now it's not. So these are not practical solutions to what's going on in our country. Embracing socialist economic policies and Marxist cultural policies, the woke crap and all the rest. This one will never learn. Pramila Jayapal, AOC, Bernie Sanders, they keep getting promoted by the media, are exactly the wrong people that Democrats should be listening to. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, the Heritage Foundation, if not one of the most important institutions in Washington, D.C., government included, non-government included. It was relied on very heavily by President Reagan and others. It was really the first of its kind, a real conservative think tank across the board on economics, foreign policy, on the Constitution, the judiciary. Ed Meese worked there for a significant amount of time after he retired from the Reagan administration. I spent a lot of time there. It's a fascinating and fantastic place. And its president is a great guy, Kevin Roberts. Kevin Roberts, how are you, my friend?
Mark Levin, what a great patriot you are. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very, very kind. I got through your book, and it was actually easy to read. It is a fantastic book. Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. I mean, you cover like the whole field. You talk about what needs to change in Washington. And not just in Washington. What needs to change, period, what ought to be eliminated, that is, let it die or kill it, and then what other institutions can be created and so forth and so on. I mean, is this like your magnus opus or something? I mean, it's really quite remarkable.
Well, that's the attempt, and obviously I get a lot of help because I work with the great policy scholars at Heritage, and we've got this policy where we speak with one voice because we want to go spend our donors' hard-earned dollars actually advocating for one single solution on certain policies. But what I tried to do is to put all of that in one book and explain, to tell you and your audience something you know, that Washington's broken, but to explain something that we don't often say enough as conservatives, and that is, how do we fix it? And so what I lay out there, as you read, and thanks so much for reading it over the weekend, is not just what needs to happen in Washington, but what needs to happen in state and local governments, and even beyond that, Mark, and I would argue this is the most important point that I emphasize, we have to regenerate our institutions, our schools, our colleges, universities, dare I say, media industry. And I use this metaphor of a controlled burn, which the Forest Service uses to regenerate forests, obviously mean that figuratively, where we go institution by institution, revitalizing them, regenerating them. And those that don't get with the program, are just going to wither on the vine and die because Americans will realize they no longer are places where we can transmit our values from one generation to the next.
Let's dig into a few of these chapters here, and one of the ones I like the most is right up front, Chapter 2, Fighting Fire with Fire. You generally alluded to it. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I'm an outdoorsman, and when I lived out in the Rocky Mountain West a couple of times, I realized that particularly under Democrat presidents that there were a lot of forest fires. My former Texas Public Policy Foundation colleague, Chuck DeVore, has mapped this out. It sounds crazy to say, but he is a great man. The reason that this is important is because what happens is that liberal Forest Service managers simply don't do the controlled burns of forests they need to do. This, by the way, is why we have all of these forest fires, not because of so-called climate change. Well, because of spending some time in the outdoors and searching for that metaphor in the book that would explain in sort of an easy to understand way what I mean by revitalizing institutions, it occurred to me one day, it's the controlled burn. And so in the same way that the cultural arsonists of the radical left have gone institution by institution, K through 12 schools, colleges and universities, the Boy Scouts of America, and I say that as a proud Eagle Scout, I think we as conservatives need to take this concept of the controlled burn and say it's now our turn, not to obviously literally set fire to anything, but to metaphorically say that we are going to be in power, not just in politics, but on the boards of these universities, leading these schools. And I think if we have that mindset, while our politics are going a little bit better, then I believe we've got real hope to take back this country.
Mm-hmm. And that chapter, ladies and gentlemen, is really quite compelling. You're only going to hear little pieces of these chapters right now, the book right now, but this is the perfect time for this book. The election's over. Now we've got to be thinking about what we want to do with the culture, what we want to do with other institutions, and so forth and so on. And this is an extraordinarily helpful book. Let's take a look. Schools should teach piety. Piety. This is very important. What do you mean by piety?
In our pluralistic society, piety means an understanding of what you and I would call the natural law, but even perhaps more pointedly than that, a reverence for what has come before us. For some of us, even accounting for our different religious traditions, the practice of that piety is going to look different, but what is going to be 100% identical is that when we wake up each day, Mark, we have a reverence for the cultural inheritance we have in the United States. And what I try to draw out there is that if you think about the sense of loss that Americans are feeling and that they voted in a certain way last week to fix, that loss isn't just the American dream per se. It's that there is a loss of piety, there is a loss of reverence, and one of the places, I argue the major place that used to perpetuate, to cultivate the sense of piety in each generation was in our schools, even in our public schools. And it is, I think our public schools happen to be the best example of this institutional rot that occurs in spite of the great people who still work in them because we have allowed it to happen. Recapturing that and doing that in a way that reflects, local mores and regional customs. These are things that we did for centuries in the United States of America. It wasn't until we created the U.S. Department of Education in 1979 that we adopted, in a formal sense, this top-down approach that has rooted out this piety.
And this piety is so important because we have all these people pouring into the country, and if they're not going to be assimilated into this piety, among other things, in these public schools, it's never going to happen, I don't think. When you look at culture, when you look at television, when you look at all kinds of entertainment, it's just not going to happen. The schools used to be the place, right?
That's right. In fact, even when I was in school, I'm 50 years old. I've only gone to public schools. That sense of piety was profound. And one of the things that we weren't necessarily taught in the way of direct instruction. We were taught by the example of our teachers. We were taught by the books that we were reading, was that the culture outside the school was something that you might be part of, but that your education in an American public school improved your ability to navigate. That is one of the things we have lost.
I can't get enough of this. I want to hold you over the break here. I'm talking to Kevin Roberts, Dr. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation. The book is great. Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. You can get it on all my social sites. You can get it at Amazon right now during the break. I want to strongly encourage you to get it. It's a very uplifting book with great ideas. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call him now, 877-381-3811.
The book is Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. You're going to love this book. It's really inspiring, actually, by Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation. Kevin, tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea to put this book together, when it was supposed to be released, and so forth. Give us a little backstory on this.
Yeah, the real quick of a long version, and I'll spend more time on the shorter context. I'm an early American historian by training, and so I've been thinking about writing a popular history book, if you will, for a long time, especially since I left full-time academic work. But when you're president of a group like Heritage, the best part of your job is actually promoting your colleagues' work. And so I spent several months at Heritage, and I realized, I can actually elevate the work of my colleagues by trying to create a synthesis of all of our ideas, but we need to do so in a way that certainly acknowledges the problems we must confront politically, socially, economically, while also being hopeful. And I use some personal stories to emphasize why all of us should be hopeful in spite of things that happened to us early in our life. And so we had decided that we would proceed with this book being published sometime in September. And then you might have noticed, Mark, that over the summer, the left just went sort of haywire in mischaracterizing this transition project that we work on every 4 years. And I was really busy, not just with that, but also with Heritage Action, our more political campaign arm, making sure we were registering voters in Arizona and Georgia and chasing those ballots. So we decided that we would publish this book this week because, regardless of how the election went, the country, and especially conservatively minded Americans, would need to have a positive vision of where we go next, and that's what this book attempts to do.
It's not easy to write a book like this. I don't care how many people you have helping you. You got to put it together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's got to make sense and so forth. And this one certainly does. Freedom, this is a big one. It's very important. Chapter 6, freedom requires order. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the things I would emphasize to every classroom of students I've had, from high schoolers to college students, is that the greatest thing philosophically the United States offers isn't freedom per se, but it's this concept of ordered liberty, that we have these two competing goods of being free and also living in an orderly society. And in the United States, we try to balance this. In fact, we're at our best if you think about the golden eras in American history, when Americans not only felt free, but they also understood that American society was stable, it was orderly, it was something that you should sort of expect what would happen tomorrow and the next week. And if you think about just that short description I mentioned of a stable American society, you realize that particularly in the last 3.5 years, but increasingly over the last 3 or 4 decades, fewer and fewer Americans would say that while they feel a little more free, they actually feel like they live in a stable society. This is what we're trying to recapture, and it requires us to remember the following. As important as politics and policy are, and I certainly talk about them, what's the most important thing is for us to cultivate in ourselves the true definition of freedom, which is the right to do what we ought. In fact, I would even say the moral obligation to do what we ought for one another, for our community, and ultimately for our nation state. And if we have that reminder, if we have that framing in the work that we're doing in our local communities, in our politics, and I use examples of just sort of ordinary Americans who do these things, I actually think our politics gets better, and it leads us back to this perfect balance of liberty and order.
One of the chapters that really brings it up to speed in terms of foreign policy, I mean, staring us in the face is communist China. It is a grave, grave threat, and you point that out in your book. Elaborate on that.
Well, we're going to have to walk and chew gum and do something else all at the same time, because as you talk about so eloquently, we have the threat from Russia. We have the very present threat of Iran. And the thing that we've been trying to sound the alarm bells on at Heritage the last 3 years is that even with the threats from the Russians and the Iranians, the Chinese Communist Party is, in my estimation, the greatest adversary in the history of the United States. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because they have been so insidious and effective at infiltrating our institutions. And so the other premise of the book, which is that we have to revitalize our institutions, collides with this claim that we've made at Heritage about the CCP. And so confronting the threat of the Chinese communists will require us not just to improve our military and our defense industrial base and to have a much clearer geopolitical vision, but we're going to have to balance these competing interests in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and China, to say nothing of what's going on in our own backyard in Latin America. But I argue, to sum up here about China, Mark, that if, in fact, we can confront China, we can be sober about it, and by the way, I think we will under Donald Trump, that actually is going to be a telltale case of how we do this with other adversaries around the world. In other words, it will pay dividends down the road.
And right now, I don't even think the country has been properly informed, is psychologically ready. I think China is extremely aggressive. They're in our hemisphere. It's like the Monroe Doctrine doesn't even exist anymore. Their Navy is now bigger than our Navy. And they've made it clear they intend to invade and conquer Taiwan in 2 or 3 years. They devoured Hong Kong without any pushback. They're fighting with the Philippines and Japan and Australia and even Vietnam. They are a grave threat to us, aren't they?
They're grave. And, all those examples you mentioned, which really came home to me or for me during my first trip to Taiwan and Japan earlier this year, it was made even more striking when I visited with several dozen ambassadors from African nations, which Heritage, of course, does. And the thing they told me was, Kevin, we have a choice. Average African nation. We can choose the woke ideology of Biden's America, where they will, require us to salute to all of this leftist nonsense, or we get to take quote unquote loans, that you don't have to pay off from the Chinese Communist Party. And that's a very difficult decision. In other words, we want to be allies with the United States, but the United States is not a good ally right now. So we're taking this money from China. That's the kind of thing that's happening in Africa. It's one of the reasons that South America has largely lurched to the left, even with the exception of Javier Milei in Argentina. This is the kind of thing that the next Secretary of State is going to have to do. And if rumors are true that that's Senator Rubio, then I am ecstatic because he understands all of this so well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you only got a little taste of this book, and it's my honor to introduce you to Kevin Roberts. Kevin Roberts, to this fantastic patriotic audience. This book is Dawn's Early Light. I want to strongly encourage you to grab it. All you have to do is go on any of my social sites or go directly to Amazon.com. Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. This is a book you're very much going to like, enjoy. It's intriguing, and it'll certainly be something you can talk about at Thanksgiving in a very, very positive way. Again, Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America, Amazon.com, or go to any of my platforms and grab a copy. Kevin Roberts, we're not going to have you as a stranger here. We're going to have you more often, if you don't mind. We really appreciate you.
Well, I love your show, so I would love to do that anytime you're ready. Thanks so much, my friend.
God bless to you and your family. Take care of yourself. It's a good man, the Heritage Foundation. It's a fantastic organization. I've always supported it. I've always liked it. It is a big deal. President Trump to go after woke generals with Warrior Board executive order. I love, Trump is hitting the ground running, Mr. Producer. He is not putzing around. Donald Trump is considering establishing a Warrior Board to review senior officers in the U.S. military and weed out woke generals, according to reports. Lincoln didn't do this exactly this way, but he did it. And a lot of wartime presidents did. And you'll say, Mark, it's not wartime. The point is you shouldn't wait to wartime. A draft executive order under consideration. Somebody's leaking stuff. That I don't like. By the president-elect's transition team would set up a board of retired senior officials to audit top brass that do not meet standards of leadership capability, strategic readiness, and commitment to military excellence. The move is thought to be Trump's first step in tackling the issue of woke generals, which he complained about on the campaign trail, arguing that diversity and inclusion politics had become more important than warfighting ability. Yes, our military is being hollowed out, not just with a lack of proper funding, but with all this radical left-wing ideology. It is a poison. A copy of the order seen by the Wall Street Journal. Somebody is trying to sabotage this president in this transition team. And I'm not messing around. I see it right here. Suggests the process will effectively be outsourced to trusted former officers. The suggestion comes amid Pentagon fears of a purge if the Trump takes office on January 20 next year. I want to remind you folks that Lincoln cleaned out a bunch of generals too. So don't say, oh my God, what's he doing? He's doing what he has to do. Eisenhower did too. The former president has faced criticism, and now they go in with the lies about what Trump said or didn't say and so forth and so on. So I'm not going to waste your time with that. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't forget this great book by Kevin Roberts, the president of Heritage Foundation. I'm telling you, you're going to love this book. Because I know you, like you know me. You're going to love this book. Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. You can get it at Amazon.com or any of my social platforms. I encourage you to do it on Amazon.com. It's discounted very nicely. Well, let's go to the calls here. Let us go to Rob, Denville, New Jersey, on the Mark Levin app. Rob, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, Mark. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Mark, we actually met years ago in Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Which I love. Was it a book signing or just generally?
A book signing, and I was the guy that gave you your Mark Levin action figure.
Wait, I have that on my shelf in our Florida house. Do you know that? In a prominent place. You're the guy who did that. Was amazing what you did.
It really was, wasn't it?
But does that mean you can't do it again, I guess?
Well, I know, like artists, so it took a lot of time, a lot of people, and a lot of money, actually.
That was so kind of you.
It was my pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
And it looks like me.
My question is very simple.
Yes.
Now that we have the House, and now that we have the Senate, right, if they really pass a bill or a law saying one-day voting and paper ballots, will that be the law, or can the states do something to mess that up? That's
See, I mean, they could pass that law, but I would argue, because this is what they want to do. They want to make a zillion changes in these state laws and impose them on the states as if it's everybody's California. I would argue that it's unconstitutional to do that because significantly, and I've read all these debates in these state conventions where the transcripts are available. I've read 9 of them. And it's pretty clear that this was a big issue for the states. Some of them weren't going to ratify. They want to control the bulk, the substance of the electoral process, even in federal elections. And so I would argue that you just can't pass a statute and change it all like the Democrats want to do. They have a bill called S1, which Schumer wants to pass on day one if they ever take the majority. One day they will. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know. There's things they're trying to do, like voter ID in every state and so forth, so maybe they could push that to a point. I'm not against trying, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we got to, like Ken Roberts says in his book, fight fire with fire. I just think sometimes we got to do what we got to do.
Right. I think so, too. Yeah. Something has to be done, but that was my question. So that was it, sir.
I want to thank you. No. I just want you to know that's in a prominent place. And it was stunningly well done. And I love Ridgewood, New Jersey. I love their diners there. I look bookends there. It's a wonderful town, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, brother. Thank you for your call. I much appreciate it. Why don't we pick off another one, Mr. Producer? Let's see here. Let's go to... Hold on, my damn phone shut down. I got a brand new phone. It does everything. The problem is, I don't know how to work it all. Give me a name and a place, Mr. Producer. You can do it. WVNN, one of my first affiliates. Athens, Alabama, but out of Huntsville. We love that station. We love those towns there. Robert, go right ahead, please. Athens, Alabama.
Hey, man, I hope you're doing all right and your leg gets better.
Yeah, it's getting much better. Luckily, I'm not a football player, so I can take a little slower on it.
Well, I'm not young enough to play football anyway. I can't do that no more. Man, I tell you what, these media types.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your phone number, and I mean it. Christian, get his phone number. When we take calls tomorrow, you're first on the list. I apologize to you. I don't mean to be rude. We're out of time, and I lost count. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Israel, and you, the American people. Look what you've done. You grabbed our country back. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.